Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sun Yuxin, and my group member is Pan Yulin, Zhang Kaixuan, Su Bozihao, Yu Renhe, Zhang Yuxuan, Wang Chu, Hu Qingfei, Shi Zhe, Cheng Tianle, Song Shihong, Wang Haoyu, Zhang Yudong. The topic of today is the human rights in Malaysia.
Today I would like to talk about the importance of human rights, especially in the context of Malaysia. Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that every person deserves simply because they are human. This includes the right to live safely, the freedom to express our opinions, the freedom to practice our religion, and the right to be treated fairly and with dignity. These rights apply to everyone, every individual, regardless of race, religion, gender, or social background. In Malaysia, human rights play a very important role because we live in a diverse society made up of different culture, identities, and religions. To ensure fairness and equality for everyone, Malaysia relies on its main legal foundation, the political constriction. Although the conclusion does not directly use the term human rights, it provides a strong foundation for fundamental liberties. These include personal liberty, equality before the law, and freedom of rights to speech, families, and religions. In conclusion, human rights are essential for a peaceful and humorous society. When human rights are respected, people feel safer, communities grow stronger, and the nation moves forward with unity and progress. Thank you.
Let's get into this part. We'll talk about the Federal Constitution and its relationship with human rights in Malaysia. I begin with a simple but fundamental point. The Federal Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Article 4.1 establishes constitutional supremacy, which means that any law or government action inconsistent with the Constitution can be declared invalid by the courts. Judicial review therefore plays a central role in protecting fundamental liberties and constitutional amendment procedures, including two-thirds parliamentary majorities and, in some cases, the consent of the Conference of Rulers, act as safeguards against hasty changes. Turning to the substance of rights, Part 2 of the Constitution. The fundamental liberties provide the domestic legal basis for many civil and political rights. Key provisions include Article 5 on life and personal liberty, Article 6 prohibiting slavery and forced labor, Article 7 protecting against retrospective criminal laws and double jeopardy, Article 8 guaranteeing equality before the law, and Article 9 to 11 covering freedom of movement, speech, assembly, association, and religion. Article 12 and 13 further secure educational and property rights. These constitutional guarantees from the primary source by which Malaysians can seek redress and protection.
However, the Constitution also contains built-in limitations. Article 10, for example, allows parliaments to impose restrictions on speech or assembly for reasons such as public order or national security. Similarly, the Constitution reflects Malaysia's social and historical context. For instance, by recognizing Islam and the religion of the Federation and by protecting the special position of Malays and Bumiputera, which influence how rights are interpreted and applied in practice. Malaysia follows a dualist approach to international law. International treaties do not automatically become domestic law without implementing legislation. Nevertheless, international standards such as the UDHR serve as persuasive guidance for courts and institutions. The Suharkam, established under the Human Rights Commission Act 1999, is mandated to promote and protect human rights and to consider international norms in its work, even though it lacks binding enforcement power. Together, the Constitution, the judiciary, and the institutions like Suharkam create an interconnected framework for rights protection. In conclusion, the Federal Constitution provides a robust domestic foundation for human rights while also reflecting the country's multiple cultural realities. The path forward lies in liberal judicial interpretation, legislative reform of overly restrictive statutes, and strengthening institutions like Suharkan to better harmonize constitutional sovereignty with an universal human dignity. These steps will also Malaysia more closer to a balanced, rights-respecting society. Thank you.
I will discuss the establishment background of the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia, SUHAKAM. The Human Rights Commission of Malaysia was established in the late 20th century as Malaysia's response to international human rights norms and domestic governance needs. In 1999, Malaysia passed the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia Act 1999, formally creating this institution. Its establishment was driven by international influence following the end of the Cold War. Global attention to human rights grew, and the United Nations encouraged states to establish national human rights institutions in accordance with the Paris Principles. During Malaysia's membership in the United Nations Commission on Human Rights from 1993 to 1995, the country was further exposed to and embraced international expectations for human rights protection. Domestically, former Deputy Prime Minister Tun Musa Hitam first proposed the establishment of a human rights body in 1994, aiming to build a bridge between Malaysia's constitution and the international human rights standards. The act was gazetted on September 9, 1999, and the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia began operations in April 2000. This marked the first institutionalization of human rights governance in Malaysia, indicating the state's recognition of the need for a permanent, legally empowered mechanism to advance human rights dialogue, monitor compliance, and align with international human rights systems. The establishment of the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia is not only a legal outcome but also a reflection of Malaysia's commitment to human rights in the context of globalization.
Next, we're going to talk about SUHAKM's powers, procedures, and implementation. In terms of power, SUHAKM is a statutory independent body. It is empowered to investigate human rights complaints, provide recommendations to the government, and submit annual reports. It also conducts public education and advocates to raise awareness of human rights. However, it lacks enforcement authority, relying instead on moral persuasion, public pressure, and governmental cooperation. Regarding procedure, SUHAKM follows a clear complaints handling process. Complaints can be submitted by individual or organization and undergo a preliminary review to determine admissibility. Accepted case proceed to formal investigation, which may involve summoning witnesses, requesting documents, and conduct field visits. Findings are compiled into reports containing recommendations, which are usually made public to ensure transparency. In implementation, despite having no enforcement power, SUHAKM advances human rights through research, police advice, and collaboration. It monitors government policies, particularly in areas such as detention, freedom of expression, and mental rights. It works with NGOs and academic institutions to promote human rights education and engage with international human rights mechanisms to align Malaysia with global standards. In summary, SUHAKM is a human rights institution centered on advocacy, education, and collaboration, relying on societal consensus and the government's cooperation to fulfill its mandate.
I will briefly introduce two major human rights organizations in Malaysia. First, Group4. It was established in 2011 by former commissioners of Suharkan and the Royal Police Commission. Its core mission is to promote human rights in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Its main activities are public education, policy research, and dear guidelines. ProHim works closely with Parliament and other stakeholders, focusing on issues related to SDG 16, peace and justice. It also provides legal aid to marginalized communities. The second is HACM, one of Malaysia's oldest human rights NGOs, founded in 1991 by distinguished figures, including two former prime ministers. HACM's primary goal is to advocate for and defend all human rights. It campaigns to repel lies inconsistent with human rights standards and arts, the ratification of international treaties. Its work involves research, public statements, forums, and advocates on critical national issues, such as the abolition of the military death penalty. In summary, ProHome and HACM, one focusing on governance and education, the other on legal and police advocate, together play vital roles in advancing human rights in Malaysia. Thank you.
Hello everyone, today I will introduce two important Malaysia NGOs, Suka Society and Mai Kashi Foundation. Suka Society is a registered NGO dedicated to protecting the rights and well-being of children. Their mission is to ensure that every child, especially those who are vulnerable at risk and has the opportunity to grow and reach their full potential. The organization provides training for children and child-related professionals, carries out such on children's rights, and supports community welfare programs. One of their key roles is helping children in cases such as trafficked children or those in detention. They assist in interview victims, interview the best placements, and often weekly hearing programs in government across KL and Sembling. Next is the Make Foundation. Make Foundation lived in 2009 supports low-income families in Malaysia through transport and Set6 system using the market. This ensures that assistance is used only for food items. Their main programs, Love My Neighborhood and Love My School, provide food out, business and school support. They also help schools with digital equipment, robotics, sports and classes. Beyond the basic aid, Makishi focuses on long-term empowerment through financial training, life skills workshops, and health education. The conclusion is, in summary, Suka Society protects and uplifts vulnerable children, while My Kashi Foundation supports poor families and empowers them toward independence. Both organizations play roles in building a cunning and inclusive society in Malaysia.
Others, Lawyers for Liberty, or LFL, is a human rights organization in Malaysia. It was started by a group of lawyers who want to protect freedom, justice, and the rule of law. They believe everyone deserves a fair treatment. LFL helps people who face problems like police abuse, unfair arrest, and illegal detention. They also speak up for freedom of speech and protest. At the same time, they help refugees, stateless people, and others who are often treated unfairly. Besides give legal help, LFL also runs public campaigns and pushes the government to empower the law. Their goal is to make Malaysia a fairer and safer place for everyone.
Today we will talk about human rights issue in Malaysia. Our last international reports that detention center have very poor conditions with overcrowding and a lack of medical care. These problems have caused many deaths in custody, which shows serious safety concerns. Amnesty also mentioned that the death penalty is still used for some covers racial worries about fair consent, freedom of speech and peaceful assembly are also limited by laws like the Sedition Act. The future highlight first evasion curse of indigenous groups such as violent in Sabah are more nasty recommends improving detention centers, ending the death penalty, and growing stronger protection to vulnerable communities.
Human Rights Watch highlights many similar issues in Malaysia. They report censorship of online posts, media, and social comments, especially on race, religion, and royalty. HRW also noticed religious discrimination against minorities and non-Sunni Muslims. They point out harassment and criminalization of LGBTQ and people who lack legal protection. Refugees and migrants face detention and deportation because Malaysia does not recognize refugee status. There are also serious concerns about police misconduct, and this is in consistency with weak investigations. HRW suggests reforming restrictive laws, creating an independent police compliance body, and protecting minorities, refugees, and LGBTQ and individuals. Both organizations agree that Malaysia needs stronger human rights protections and clear, fair laws to ensure justice for everyone. Thank you.
Hello everyone, today I will talk about how Malaysia can deal with the conflict between the Federal Constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or UDHR. Malaysia's human rights come mainly from the Federal Constitution, while the UDHR is an international guideline. Even though Malaysia is not legally bound by the UDHR, it still influences our policies and discussions. However, our constitution allows limits on rights for reasons like security, public order, religion, and morality. These limits sometimes make our rights narrower than those in the UDHR. For example, first, freedom of religion. The Constitution protects this right, but there are limits, such as restrictions on spreading other religions to Muslims, and the rule of the Sahara court. This is different from the UDHR, which gives more complicated freedom of belief. Second, freedom of expression. Even though Article 10 protects speech, laws like the Sedition Act and Communications and Multimedia Acts place strong restrictions. The UDHR gives wider freedom to express opinions. So how can we reduce this conflict? Let me show 5 ways. 1. A broader interpretation of the Constitution. Courts can interpret rights in a more open and modern way, using the UDHR as a guide. This helps protect rights without changing the Constitution. 2. Strengthening Suhakam. If Suhakam becomes more independent and influential, it can help review laws, advise the government, and push for better human rights practices. 3. Update the reform accounting ways. Some order of restrictive laws should be reviewed to make sure they do not limit rights more than necessary. 4. Ratify more human rights treaties. Joint treaties like ICCPR can help Malaysia improve its legal framework and get closer to UDHR standards. 5. Improve public understanding of human rights. More education and public awareness can help Malaysians know their rights and encourage positive change. In conclusion, the conflict between the Constitution and the UDHR can be solved through better legal interpretation, stronger institutions, law reform,
international cooperation and public education. With these steps, Malaysia can move closer to global human rights standards while still respecting our own national values. Thank you.
This conclusion summarizes Malaysia's human rights framework, covering its legal base, institutions, challenges, and improvement paths. Malaysia's human rights protection is anchored in the federal constitution, with Part 2 fundamental liberties as the core domestic source, and operates under a dualist legal system, where the UDHR serves as persuasive reference, balancing universal values and local socio-political realities. Restrictions on liberties and permitted for public order and national security. The Human Rights Commission of Malaysia, SUHAKAM, established in 2000 under Act 597, is the key institutional pioneer, tasked with complaint investigations, policy advice, and civil society cooperation. Though it lacks coercive authority, it is complemented by NGOs. Proham focus on policy dialogue, Hakam on legal reform advocacy, Sukha Society on child rights, My Kasi Foundation on low-income groups' economic rights, and the LFL on legal remedies and police accountability. Despite this structured framework, notable challenges persist. These include tensions between constitutional provisions and UDHR standards, as well as practical issues like poor detention conditions, retention of the death penalty, and discrimination against marginalized groups, all highlighted by Amnesty International and HRW. To tackle these issues, improvement measures include adopting a more liberal constitution interpretation with HDHR as a reference, strengthening SCARCOM's capacity, revising restrictive laws, ratifying more international treaties, and promoting human rights education. In short, Malaysia has a formal human rights system, but further reforms are needed to balance national context and universal standards, ensuring better protection for all groups.